What's up, YouTube? Just got done with a nice long day of poker. We hopped in some 5, 10, 20 cash at the Wynn and then played a tournament. So I hope you'll enjoy this one.
We start off shorthanded with a couple pros just to get the game going. First hand, or one of the first hands, small blind limps. I make it 40 with King Jack, pretty standard. And pro in the small blind limp re-raise, this is 200. I'm not going anywhere. He could have a lot of bluffs. Not the best flop. We get the 10-10-4. Also a spot where it's a board where it's hard for the 3-better to go too crazy because we can have trips here. He bets pretty small. He bets 100 into about a $400 pot. Not ready to go anywhere yet. Turn is an 8, and I'm expecting pre-flop or 3-better to check here a decent amount. He can definitely still bet with over pairs or in some bluffs. But he will be checking some over pairs sometimes too, I think. He doesn't get unlimited aggression here, and he bets 500, and I have to fold this hand. So we started out losing a little bit in a tough short-handed game, but you know, we're ready to make something happen as we go along. We got moved to the main game now, so now we're in a more normal game. It's 8 or 9-handed now. I decide to 3-bet the Jack-10 offsuit on the button against the cutoff open. It's a little loose, but play I like to mix in now and then. Pretty deep. It's hard for the opponent to do too much about it. We take it down. We get an aggressive start to this table. For this hand, small blind limps, big blind who we just 3-bet makes it 80. Or he's about to make it 80. Yeah, there he goes. Makes it 80. We go ahead and 3-bet the ace-queen suited. Already starting to get an aggressive dynamic with this player after I just 3-bet him from the button. But he does decide to lay it down. I was expecting to get some action there, but might be a little suspicious of me going forward, so we'll see how that plays out. Early position makes it 50. This is the player I've already 3-bet a couple times. Or I think he made it 60 actually, and oh no, he made it 50, and I go ahead and make it 180. Definitely expecting to get some action. Ace King suited. It's pretty great hand, and the big blind looks like he's wanting to put some chips in the pot, and I tell him to go ahead and get in the pot, which we'll see how that goes for me. He decides to make the call for 180, and under the gun player actually decides to lay it down. We get a pretty great flop, ace queen. Good spot to start putting money in. He checks. I do decide to check back. I'm gonna have to have some checks on this board, but he's gonna be pretty strong from the big blind. Turns a 10, and he leads out for 200. I decide to call, and the river is another 10. We got a full house, and he goes all in immediately for about his 4,100 after we figure out how much it is.
I went into the tank for a long time here, and I definitely didn't think that he was bluffing, but I did think there was a non-zero chance that this player could make an all-in play without having me beat even. So I thought there was a chance I actually could win, but looking back, I think I can lay it down, given that I could have quad aces sometimes or ace queen sometimes. So I think the camera might have influenced my decision a little bit, but can't always lay it down.
Okay, I call.
For 2-5, also hold them down for 2-5.
Oh,
so sick. So sick.
cannot do anything, bro.
That's so sick. Oh my god.
I mean, wow, man. That's
I
Wow.
thought about folding. I almost folded, but
you gonna fold.
You raise king?
ace king, yeah.
Ah, damn.
Damn it.
Michael.
Oh, that is so sick.
Nice hand.
That's not a positive, man. You got it on the, you know?
I know.
It's content, it's content, right? Like you probably like net make money with the content.
4,025.
Sorry, how much?
4,025. Give me 25, yeah.
Queen maybe, but not ten.
Man, yeah, that's sick.
Wow, this is a ticket. I thought you had queens.
A couple hands later, we're a little steamed now. You know, we're losing over 5,000 in the game probably. The big blind limps. I'm in the straddle with king 7, and I jack it up to $70. And this player limp raises me to 200. He's the same player that I've been 3-betting, and now he gets to 3-bet me. But blind versus blind, king 7 suited. I'm definitely not going anywhere. I could consider 4-betting. I think it would be pretty good. It's kind of a small 3-bet, so I decided to just call, and we get a really nice flop, ace king deuce with the nut flush draw. He checks. I decide to check back. I'm way ahead of most of his under pairs and still behind an ace. It's a good hand to check and kind of set the trap, be able to call a lot of turns, make the nuts on a lot of runouts. Turn is a 7, we make 2 pair, and he checks, and I bet 270 into about 450. Pretty easy value bet, and he does check call. So he could have a lot of different pairs here, or even an ace or a king. River's a jack, and he checks again. And a pretty easy spot to go for value. He can have a lot of hands to call down with. Even though this board is a little bit better for the 3-better, I could still have the queen 10, so he can't just stuff it on me or anything like that, most likely. I bet 670, and he tanks for a while and comments that it's a pretty big bet. I don't think it's that big of a bet, and I say so. There's over 900 in the pot, so it's not a crazy sized bet. After tanking for a pretty good bit, he decides to make a fold. It's a good laydown by him. I think he said he had a bad ace, so maybe 3-bet me with like ace 5 or something. So the table's been doing bomb pots every dealer change, which is where you put in everyone puts in 60 and we go straight to the flop, no pre-flop betting. It's one of my favorite forms of poker to mess around with. Anything can happen. Anyone can have anything. It's really fun. Everyone gets to see the flop, and we're in there with the 4-5 of diamonds for this hand. A couple people check. I check, and the player to my left bets 320. So it's pretty big bet. There's maybe 400 or so out there in the middle. I'm gonna have a decision to make. The button calls, everyone else folds, so I consider raising, but the stacks are a little bit awkward. With the flush draw out there, I could easily get jammed on by a flush draw and put myself in a pretty bad spot. So I decide to just take a card off, see if I can make the nuts or a straight. Maybe bluff on some runouts if they both check the turn. Turns a 4. I check, and player to my left keeps the pressure going here, and he bets around 900. I think he bets 880, and I'm no longer drawing to the nuts anymore. We could be crushed with 8-5. 2 flush draws out there. It's a tough spot, and I decide to lay it down, being out of position, bad visibility, just not that many things can go well here, so we decided to let it go.
I don't remember the guy who was sitting in the game together, nameplate or something. Okay.
We're here for the next bomb pot. We got Jack 8 offsuit on a King 10 board. I think there's only about 6 players in this hand because a couple people are leaving the table. I decided to fire out 120 after a couple checks, just a pure bluff. But you know, in these bomb pots, a lot people can have just low disconnected hands. You know, Ace 5, 9 7, a bunch of hands that aren't able to connect with that board. So I decided to take a stab, see what happens, and they let me have it. For this hand, we look down at the Ace 7 suited under the gun. Go ahead and make it 50. We get called on the player 2 spots behind us. He's not a player who has to have a super strong hand here, I don't believe. We end up going heads up to the flop, and we get the King 5-3 flop. I have backdoor flush draw. I think it's a good spot to go ahead and throw out a c-bet. May be able to get some better ace highs to fold, or there's a lot of spades, or 4, 6, a lot of cards that'll give you a gut shot where I could potentially continue on. He does call, and the turn's an ace. It's a good spot to keep betting, keep the pressure on, but I decided to check because this is one of the worst aces I have, so I decided to play a little bit more defensively, see what happens. He bets 140, and I got an easy call here. River's a 3, so if he did have a better ace than me, we're chopping now. So I'm pretty much in check call mode, but he checks back, and we go ahead and win. He said he had a king, so he decided to bet the turn with the king, so I got a little bit of value from the king with checking anyway. We wake up in the straddle with the mighty Jack Deuce offsuit. You know, not the best hand in poker, but we get to see a free flop. Four ways to the flop. Comes King Queen 10, 2 hearts. So I've got the backdoor second nut flush draw and an open ender. Checks to the button, who bets 40 into an $80 pot. Small blind calls. We call. Other player calls, so no one folded the flop. No one's getting away from this hand. And turn is the 8 of hearts. So now I've got an open ender and the second nut flush draw. Small blind checks, and I decide to get a little unconventional here. I think I can have a good amount of flushes. I don't have too many hands I'm gonna want to bluff with. I probably wouldn't make this play without the Jack of hearts. And I decide to lead out into the field for a bet of $150. Player behind me doesn't think too long, and he decides to call, so my bluff's not going too great so far. The button counts out a stack of chips. I think he might be calling, and we might be going multi-way to a turn, but you know, he keeps putting chips out, which is not a good sign for me, and he raises to about $400. Pretty awkward situation, since I could be fairly live, but I decided to lay it down with player behind me, and thinking that he mostly probably has flushes. He shows us the king 8, so he made a raise there with 2 pair, got us off a hand that had a lot of outs, and nice for him. We got a couple limps ahead of us from the big blind with the queen jack suited, and we jack it up to 140. Why not get some money in the pot? These players aren't super likely to re-raise me, and I'd rather just thin the field, build a pot. We got a nice hand. A lot of things are gonna go right here.
My self-loathing must be higher than usual because I'm about to play a 1K.
Get the ace-8 board, not the best, but you know, opponent's not necessarily likely to have anything either, so pretty good hand just to make a small bet with, and see what happens. Opponent decides to call, and he's a little bit short stacked here, so it turns a 10. He doesn't necessarily have to have an ace. The stacks are a little bit awkward. I could potentially even put him all in, but I don't really see the point of that when he's never going to fold an ace and probably going to fold worse than an ace to a small bet. So I go ahead and bet 180, and he does lay it down, so we get lucky that we didn't run into the ace there. It would have been kind of awkward if he shoved the turn on us. For this hand, we look down at the 9-8 of diamonds. We get a middle position open and a middle position, or a late position call. We decide to peel from the small blind. The caller isn't very deep stacked, so I could potentially have just thrown this in the muck, but I like to see the flop, you know, have some fun, see what happens. We flop the flush draw, ace king 3 board. The original raiser makes a bet of 80, so a little under half pot bet, and we're the only person that decides to come along. I'm never going to raise this board against a pre-flop raiser with the ace and the king on there. Turns an ace, not too great. Check, and luckily I river a pair of 9 so that I'm not forced to make a bluff here, and I check, just trying to show down. My opponent makes a bet, and I decide to fold pretty quickly. I didn't think it was that likely that that player was going to take that line as a bluff. Ooh, there's a limp in this one. Two limps actually. We go ahead and jack it up from the button with the king 10 offsuit. The first limper folds, and the second limper fortunately ships it all in for about 400. I decide to give him a little gamble and see what happens here. We get a nice king on the flop, so feeling pretty good. Show the king. The rest of the runouts pretty safe for us, and we end up beating ace queen. So what are you gonna do? Had a little too much out there to lay it down.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Played for a couple hours, and we ended up losing about 3,800. It basically all came down to that one big hand. Nothing else was really that consequential of a pot. And then hopped in the 1K Wynn tournament, but ran it up a little bit. Got about 5 times starting stack, but then I dusted that pretty quick, making check calling 3 streets with top pair in a tough spot. So I'm out of that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video.